Breaking! The mask has finally slipped. For months, we have been fed a diet of polished press releases and choreographed handshakes designed to convince us that the relationship between Prime Minister Keir Starmer and Chancellor Rachel Reeves is a fortress of unity. We were told they are the dynamic duo, the inseparable architects of Britain's renewal, moving in perfect lockstep to fix the mess left behind by years of chaos. But if you look closely at the events of the last few days, if you listen to the whispers echoing through the corridors of Westminster, you realize that this fortress is built on sand. We are witnessing the beginning of a brutal, high-stakes political divorce that isn't just threatening the stability of the Labour Party, but the very governability of the United Kingdom. The cracks aren't just showing. They are widening into a chasm that threatens to swallow the entire administration. Imagine two drivers in the same car, both grabbing the steering wheel, but one wants to slam on the brakes while the other is desperate to hit the gas. That is the situation in Downing Street right now. Rachel Reeves, the self-styled Iron Chancellor, has locked herself into a rigid ideology of fiscal discipline, a strategy so unyielding that it is strangling the government's political options. She has staked her entire career on being the person who says no. But Keir Starmer is the one who has to go out and face the voters. He is the one watching his approval ratings plummet. He is the one hearing the anger on the doorstep. And he is beginning to realize that his chancellor's refusal to bend might just break his premiership before it is even properly begun. This is no longer a partnership. It is a power struggle for the soul of the government. Before we dive into the wreckage of this relationship, do me a quick favor. If you want to know what is really happening behind the closed doors of power, hit that subscribe button and smash the bell icon. The mainstream media will tell you everything is fine until the moment the government collapses. We are here to tell you the truth while there is still time to react. It's free, it helps us keep the pressure on, and it proves you're not buying the official narrative. Cheers if you're with us. Now, let's dissect the anatomy of this disaster. To understand why this split is happening now, you have to look at the trap Labour built for itself. During the election, the strategy was simple. Project absolute economic competence. Reeves was deployed as the ultimate weapon against Tory attacks, a human shield made of fiscal rules and prudent promises. It worked to get them into power, but governing is not campaigning. In the cold light of day, the Iron Chancellor routine is becoming a millstone around the Prime Minister's neck. Every time Starmer wants to offer a glimmer of hope to a public battered by the cost of living crisis, he runs into the brick wall of the Treasury. He wants to talk about rebuilding, she wants to talk about restraint. He wants to offer a vision of the future, she is obsessed with the debts of the past. The tension has moved beyond professional disagreement into something far more dangerous, a divergence of survival instincts. Starmer is a political pragmatist. He knows that a government that offers nothing but pain for 5 years will be annihilated at the ballot box. He senses the mood of the country shifting from give them a chance to they are all the same. He knows he needs to pivot, he needs to spend, he needs to show results that people can actually feel in their pockets and see in their communities. But Reeves is playing a different game. She isn't looking at the next by-election, she is looking at the bond markets. She is terrified of a Liz Truss-style market meltdown, so terrified that she has become paralyzed by caution. She is treating the British economy like a patient in a coma who needs rest, while Starmer realizes the patient is actually starving and needs food. And here is where it gets worse. The silence between them is becoming deafening. In recent appearances, the body language has shifted from supportive to strained. Note the lack of eye contact. Note the way Starmer hesitates before answering questions on the economy, as if he is mentally checking with his chancellor to see if he is allowed to speak. It is the behavior of a leader who is not fully in control of his own government. It sends a signal of weakness that is blood in the water for the sharks circling in Westminster. The message being sent to the public is confused and contradictory. One day we are told the economy is turning a corner. The next day we are told the black hole is deeper than ever and we must accept reduced services. This chaotic messaging is the direct result of a leadership team that is pulling in two different directions. Let's translate this political friction into plain English. The Prime Minister wants to be the hero who saves the NHS and rebuilds the schools. The Chancellor is acting as the villain who says we can't afford the cape. And the tragedy is, Starmer let this happen. He empowered Reeves to such a degree that she has effectively become a co-prime minister. He handed her the keys to the car, and now he is realizing she is driving them off a cliff of political irrelevance. But he can't grab the wheel back without causing a crash. It is a trap of his own making, and the walls are closing in. The pressure cooking inside the Labour Party is the catalyst that is going to blow this wide open. You have to remember that a political party is not a monolith. It is a collection of egos, ambitions, and nervous wrecks terrified of losing their seats. The backbench MPs, the foot soldiers of the government, are already in a state of near panic. They go back to their constituencies every weekend, and what do they hear? They don't hear voters praising the fiscal headroom or the stability of the gilt market. They hear complaints about potholes, waiting lists, freezing homes, and rising bills. They hear a sense of betrayal. They promised change, but the only change their constituents are seeing is a change in the excuses for why nothing can be done. These MPs are taking their anger back to Westminster, and they are bypassing the Treasury to go straight to number 10. They are banging on Starmer's door, demanding action. They are telling him, in no uncertain terms, that if he doesn't loosen the purse strings, they are going to face an electoral massacre. This puts Starmer in an impossible position. He is being squeezed between the rock of his chancellor's ideology and the hard place of his party's survival. If he listens to Reeves, he faces a rebellion from his own MPs. If he listens to the MPs, he risks a war with Reeves and a potential market crisis. It is a lose-lose scenario, and the strain is visible on his face. But then, look at the unions. The people who bankrolled the Labour victory are not going to sit quietly while the government imposes austerity light. They are demanding pay rises, investment, and a reversal of the cuts. Reeves has been sending them away empty-handed, using her black hole narrative as a shield. But the unions know how to count. They see the money being found for other priorities when the political will exists. They are starting to see Reeves not as a prudent manager, but as an ideological opponent. And they are looking at Starmer, asking him a very simple question. Whose side are you on? Starmer, who built his leadership on uniting the party, is now watching it fracture down the middle. And here's what makes it worse. The betrayal narrative is sticking. It's sticking because it rings true. When you campaign on hope and garn on despair, people notice. When you promise to protect working people and then strip away their safety nets in the name of tough choices, people notice. The internal polling for Labour is reportedly flashing red warning signs. The honeymoon period hasn't just ended, it has been annulled. The voters are not just disappointed, they are feeling duped. And every angry letter that lands on an MP's desk increases the pressure on Starmer to break free from Reeves' grip. We are seeing the formation of anti-Reeves factions within the cabinet itself. Ministers who want to deliver on their departmental briefs are finding their plans blocked by the Treasury. They are leaking their frustrations to the press. We are starting to see stories about the arrogance of the Chancellor's team, about the stifling control being exerted over spending. This is how coups begin, not with a shout, but with a whisper campaign. Starmer is trying to hold the line, trying to maintain the facade of unity, but he is standing on a fault line that is starting to quake. The party knows that if they don't change course soon, the damage will be irreversible, and they are looking at Starmer to make the call. Now we have to address the authority vacuum. Who is actually running the country? In a normal government, the Prime Minister sets the destination and the Chancellor buys the ticket. In this government, the Chancellor has decided we aren't going anywhere because tickets are too expensive, and the Prime Minister is just sitting in the passenger seat nodding along. This inversion of power is dangerous. It creates a zombie government, unable to act, unable to pivot, unable to lead. Starmer is looking less like a statesman and more like a spokesman for the Treasury. Let's talk about the optics of tough choices. When Reeves stands up and says we have to make tough choices, she frames it as a moral necessity. But tough choices is just politician code for we are going to hurt the people with the least power because the people with the most power are untouchable. Starmer knows this. He knows that stripping benefits or cutting services hits his core voters the hardest. Yet, he is forced to defend these policies because he has tied his credibility to Reeves' mast. He is burning his own political capital to keep her warm. The media, which was initially willing to give the new government the benefit of the doubt, is now smelling blood. They see a prime minister who vacillates. They see a chancellor who is rigid. They see a disconnect between the rhetoric of growth and the reality of stagnation. Every interview where Starmer struggles to explain why there is no money for nurses but plenty of money for debt interest payments chips away at his authority. He looks weak. And in politics, looking weak is fatal.
It raises the question, is Starmer afraid of his own chancellor? Is he afraid that if he challenges her, she will walk? A resignation by a chancellor this early in a parliament would be a catastrophic vote of no confidence. It would crash the markets. It would destroy the government's reputation for stability. Reeves holds the nuclear codes to the economy, and she knows it. She has Starmer in a bind. She can dictate terms because the alternative, her departure, is too terrifying for him to contemplate. So she pushes her agenda, she tightens the screws, and he has to take the heat. But this dynamic cannot hold. You cannot have a prime minister who is afraid of his subordinate. You cannot have a government where the Treasury dictates social policy. We are reaching a point where Starmer will have to decide what matters more, his relationship with Rachel Reeves or his relationship with the British people. He cannot keep both. The authority of the Prime Minister's office is evaporating with every day that he fails to assert himself. The public is watching, and they are seeing a leader who is being led.
Let's look at the moral dimension of this collapse. The Labour Party was founded to protect the vulnerable against the powerful. That is its DNA, that is its purpose. But under the Reeves-Starmer axis, we are seeing a distortion of that purpose. We are seeing a government that seems more concerned with appeasing the editorial board of the Financial Times than feeding hungry children in Liverpool or Leeds. This isn't just a political failure, it is a moral failure, and it is a failure that is being felt in the gut of the nation. When Reeves talks about fiscal responsibility, she is using a sterile, academic term to describe real-world suffering. Fiscal responsibility means a pensioner choosing between heating and eating. Fiscal responsibility means a crumbling school roof not being fixed. Fiscal responsibility means a waiting list that grows longer every month. Starmer knows this. He is a human rights lawyer by trade. He understands justice. But he has allowed himself to be convinced that economic injustice is a necessary price for political credibility. This is the great lie at the heart of their partnership. The system failure here is total. We were told that the adults were back in the room. We were told that competence had returned. But what is competent about a strategy that drives the economy into the ground to save a few decimal points on a spreadsheet? What is competent about alienating your entire voter base in the first year of government? This is the behavior of a technocracy, not a democracy. It is ruled by calculator, devoid of empathy, devoid of vision, and devoid of hope. The betrayal of ordinary people is palpable. They voted for change because they were desperate. They were drowning, and they reached out for a lifeline. Instead, they were thrown an anchor labeled fiscal rules. Reeves and Starmer are asking people to be patient, to endure more hardship, promising that it will be worth it in the end. But people have heard that promise before. They heard it in 2010. They heard it in 2015. They are tired of waiting for a tomorrow that never comes. They want a government that fights for them today. And here is the ultimate tragedy. Starmer has the power to change this. He has the mandate. He has the majority. He could choose to invest. He could choose to tax wealth instead of work. He could choose to rebuild the public realm. But he chooses not to, because he is terrified of breaking the rules set by his chancellor. He is choosing the approval of the establishment over the welfare of the people. That is not leadership. That is cowardice, and the moral stain of that choice will not wash off easily. So where does this end? How does this story conclude? It doesn't end with a handshake and a smile. It ends with a collision. We are hurtling towards a budget or a fiscal event where something has to give. The irresistible force of political reality is about to hit the immovable object of Rachel Reeves' ideology.
And when that impact happens, the explosion will be felt across the entire political landscape.
If Starmer decides to pivot, if he decides to spend, Reeves will have to walk or be humiliated. If Reeves stands her ground and forces more austerity, the backbenches will revolt and Starmer's leadership will be challenged. There is no middle ground left. The bridge has been burned. The countdown has begun. We are watching the slow-motion disintegration of a partnership that was supposed to define a decade. The signals of political collapse are already flashing. The leaks are getting nastier. The briefings are getting more personal. The trusted aides are starting to look for exit strategies. The smell of decay is in the air. This isn't a government at the beginning of its journey. It looks like a government at the end of its tether. The future threat isn't the opposition. The threat is inside the house. And you have to ask yourself, if they can't agree on the basics of economic survival now, what happens when a real global crisis hits? What happens if there is another war, another pandemic, another financial crash? Do you trust this fractured fighting duo to navigate a storm when they can't even navigate a calm sea without turning on each other? The answer is terrifyingly obvious. We are left with open-ended questions that should keep you awake at night. Is Keir Starmer strong enough to sack his chancellor? Is Rachel Reeves arrogant enough to bring down the government to prove a point? And most importantly, how much more pain will the British public have to endure while these two figure out their power dynamic? The script is being written in real time, and the ending looks like a tragedy. Don't look away. The revelations are just beginning. The dam is about to break, and when it does, the floodwaters will spare no one. Stay with us, because the truth is the only thing they can't spin. Is this the end of the Starmer project before it even really started? Tell me what you think in the comments, because right now, your guess is as good as theirs.